Starting October 1st, EA will be introducing advertisements at the beginning and end of our podcast episodes. Ad-free feeds will be available for subscribers through Patreon. Sign up now and lock in the $5 a month ad-free rate before the October 1st price increase. Visit patreon.com/EA podcasts for all the details, and we will talk more about this after the story. PseudoPod, episode 995, September 26th, 2025. This week's story, Data Ghost, by Martha Wells, narrated by Ray Lundberg, hosted by Alistair Stewart, with audio by Chelsea Davis. Welcome to PseudoPod, the weekly horror podcast. I'm Alistair, your host, and this week's story comes to us from the incredible Martha Wells. Martha Wells has been an SFF writer since her first fantasy novel back in 1993, and her work includes the books of the Raxora series, the L.A. Rien series, the Murderbot Diaries, and other fantasy novels, most recently Witch King from Tor.com in 2023. She has also written media tie-in fiction for Star Wars, Stargate Atlantis, and Magic the Gathering, as well as short fiction, YA novels, and non-fiction. She has won Nebula Awards, Hugo Awards, Locus Awards, an Alex Award, and a Dragon Award, and her work has appeared on the World Fantasy Award ballot, the Philip K. Dick Award ballot, the BSFA Award ballot, the USA Today bestseller list, the Sunday Times bestseller list, and the New York Times bestseller list. She is a member of the Texas Literary Hall of Fame, and her books have been published in 30 languages. She is also a consulting producer on the Murderbot series for Apple TV+, and if you haven't seen that or read the books, please do. You are in for such a delightful time. Your narrator this week is Ray Lundberg. Ray is a writer and voice actor from Kentucky. In addition to co-writing and acting for The Night Post, Ray is also the showrunner and sound designer. Their writing and sound design work can be heard in 9 to Midnight and Kill FM, and they have lent their voice to dozens of audio drama podcasts. A former English teacher, copy editor, and freelance journalist, Ray holds an MFA in creative writing and works in patent licensing for a university. They live in the SF Bay Area with their wife, 2 cats, and overflowing shelves of queer books. We'll put their socials in the show notes. So tune out the noise because, wait, you hear that? Is that true?
Data Ghost by Martha Wells, narrated by Ray Lundberg. When the station stats popped up on the screen, the interface said, "Anomalous." Denny batted at their ear and muttered, No, quit it." In the second cockpit seat, Winnie threw them a look. "What?" At Denny's shrug, her brows stayed up, skeptical. "Use your words, Tulip." "It's the interface." Denny thumped their head against the seatback, thinking about the urge to dig the thing out of their brain with a spoon. Sometimes that shut it up. They waved a hand at their head, and made their voice low and deep and ominous. "Anomalous. It's still mad because we filled out that intake form wrong at Ring Transit." The interface hissed quietly. "Anomalous." Folks?" Nahian said, his voice crackling over the comm from tertiary control. "It's not mad about the form. Look at the station." Flicking through the incoming scans with a frown, Winnie said, "This is weird. Where is everybody?" Denny looked. Okay, that was not right, though they refused to say it was anomalous. The station was silent. No outgoing signals detected. No beacons, no transmissions. "It's offline completely?" they asked. There were a lot of things that could do that, and none were good. Like a disease outbreak, or a massive malfunction, or an attack that had taken down the life support systems. "That's what it looks like." Winnie pulled out a visual to hang next to the scan schematic. "If it's out of service, it would have been nice to have some warning." Denny thought the visual made it even weirder. The scans indicated a large station, but it was also a fancy one. Built out of a chunk of asteroid, Most of the structure was hidden away in the folds of stone, except for the crystalline glitter on a pyramidal structure. No, 2 pyramidal structures, one inverted under the other, tucked against a rocky projection. It's old. 2nd wave? Maybe 3rd? Historical reference, Denny's interface said. I know how to look things up, they told it. Arguing with it made it worse. The more you interacted with it, the more it learned. But sometimes Denny couldn't help it. Found a beacon, Nahian's comm reported. It's a 1st wave transmission band. Hold on, it's translating. They waited. Winnie said, Nay, Tulip? What is it saying? It's like a historical marker, Nahian said, preoccupied. Denny's interface picked up echoes as he used the onboard archive to search for more information. Here. The beacon's synthetic voice sounded over the comm. Designated ghost station. Interdicted. Approach at own risk. No local responders. Denny found themselves sharing a look with Winnie, who mouthed, Ghost station? Approach at own risk, Denny mouthed back. They had never heard of anything like that. Oh, you have to be kidding me, Winnie muttered. Even with an interdicted station, ships still had to take a break to let the engines cycle. It was just disappointing that there would be no chance to disembark at a new place, no chance to pick up any extra cargo for cash, no new entertainment or games to bargain for, no time out for a meal they didn't cook themselves, no responders in case anything came at them out of the dark. No, it was more than disappointing, Denny admitted to himself. It was creepy. At the table in the little galley, they all ate beet noodles and soybean gravy, while Nahian searched for local traffic with half a headset jammed into his ear. This was Ship's first time on this route, and updated info was important, as it might contain recent news like, This way station is no longer designated safe, do not approach, or, You can find a local route wayfarer ship at this location for a protected cycle dock. Denny asked, So did the last archive download say anything about this station? I think I would have remembered if it said we were going to a historical disaster site. Definitely not. Picking up any comm traffic? Winnie asked Nahian, cutting up his noodles with the curve of her own spork. Nahian made a complicated grimace that meant he was working on it, and not happy with his results so far. He was the sweetest person Denny had ever met, and he had round cheeks and thick eyebrows that right now made him look like a pensive little toy bear. He said, Nothing from the station. I'm getting some derelict beacons. Winnie frowned, pushing Nahian's bowl closer to remind him to eat. She and Nahian were genetically related, though you would never know it to look at them. She was taller, thinner, and sharper. Derelict ships? Or illegal salvagers masquerading as derelicts? No way to tell. Nahian fumbled for his utensil. So everyone is as creeped out as I am? Denny was reassured they weren't the only one picking up on the vibe. At least, possibly more. The interface whispered, Anomalies represent inherent hazards. No shit, Denny told it. When Denny had first signed on as permanent crew, they had told the others about the interface. Implanted interfaces were pretty common, for anybody who had to work with bots and other feed-related transport systems. What wasn't common was to have one forcibly implanted, because your family wanted you to be a walking repository for their company data. Denny had walked all right, walked away at the first opportunity, right onto an outward-bound ship. After checking the interface with the medical scan, Winnie had sat Denny down in the medical bay's little private recovery area and said, When you first told me about this, I'll admit I was afraid of what I might find. Having it implanted against your will, let's say I was expecting the worst. But this is a high-grade unit, and it's been installed properly. Denny had rubbed the scar under their hair. Their brother had told them it was a hack job that would scramble their brain in days. But their brother had lied a lot. Okay, That's good to know. And if you want to actually use it, there shouldn't be any problem. You just need to initialize it. Initialization was exactly what Denny didn't want to do. It would give the thing more independence to access and control its data storage, more power over its own functions, which meant more power over Denny's brain. And Denny liked their brain the way it was. Not that anybody in their family had agreed. Denny's expression must have been eloquent, because Winnie held up her hands in surrender. I'm not saying you shouldn't be angry that this was done to you. And if you really want it gone, there is software to uninstall these things. We can look into that the next time we get to a big central port, where we can get quality software. The physical unit will still be there, but it'll be inert. Inert, the interface said. Data null. Denny grimaced. Having an entity, even a non-organic one, in your head talking to you as you were contemplating basically killing it was not great either. Almost as bad as having it stuck there in the first place. I'll have to think about it. It keeps arguing with me. Are you arguing with it? Because that's like arguing with your spleen. It's on your side, nobody else's. Winnie sighed. I wish Nay and I had been able to get interfaces this advanced, instead of base models. She took in their expression again and waved her hands. But don't listen to me. It's completely up to you. Denny thought it was nice to have something completely up to them. It was why they were here on ship. While ship cycled its power systems, Denny took their turn at watch, while Winnie took a sleep break. Nahian was supposed to take a sleep break too, but sometimes he was too anxious, and his medical implant didn't help enough. He and Denny ended up in the comfortably shabby lounge, playing Floating Islands. Nahian had just laughed at one of Denny's particularly bad game choices. Then Denny was blinking up at the cabin ceiling. Their head had fallen back on the couch, and the position was awkward. The game's bright landscape drifted in the air, their avatars held in standby. I fell asleep, Denny thought. The interface said, "Emergency," and Denny realized it wasn't the first time. It had been repeating that for... they didn't know how long. They sat up and blurted, "Something's wrong." Nahian slid sideways and half fell into their lap, then struggled upright. What? The word came out on a yawn. Then Nahian looked at the time on the game. He gasped, appalled. Oh, we fell asleep. No. Yes. I guess. A warning echoed through Denny's head, like the fading ring of a hull breach alarm. The interface was doing the thing where it felt like someone talking on the other side of a door. Mumbled words Denny couldn't quite hear. It felt like it had been happening for a long time. Their body felt sluggish, their brain like stale porridge, moving slowly. Nahian hit the comm and said, "Winnie, I'm really sorry. We fell asleep and missed end of watch." The interface whispered, "No answer." "Shut up," Denny told it, rattled, then felt bad for snapping. "We're awake now. It's fine." Nahian switched to the all-ship comm. "Winnie, answer please." Cold sunk down into Denny's spine. The interface had said, "No answer." It was weirdly attuned to ship, even without initialization. Something's wrong. They struggled out of the couch and started for the berths, Nahian jumping to follow. Denny dropped down through the connecting passage. Winnie's cabin door was open. She wasn't inside, but her puffy quilt lay half on the bunk. Heart pounding, Denny turned to Nahian. "We need to search." Nahian's face was drawn in dismay and confusion. "What? No. She's just in another cabin doing something private. We're still sealed up. If there were salvagers here, they couldn't get on board and just..." He stopped, like he didn't want to say, "steal someone," any more than Denny wanted to hear it. He finished, "If they did, why wouldn't they take us too? And everything else?" He made a gesture, meaning the supplies, cargo, or just take ship. I don't know. Denny's throat was dry. Ghost station, they thought. What did that even mean? Just, let's search ship. I'll check the cockpit. Nahian bit his lip, obviously trying to quell his own fear. He squeezed Denny's arm. Right. Stay on the comm, okay? Yeah, Denny agreed, already turning to take the passage up to the main deck. Along the way, Denny checked the extra cabin and the auxiliary cargo, though some sense they didn't want to examine closely told them there would be nothing to see. They reached the cockpit and dropped into a chair, waking the boards and calling up screens. Nay, you okay? Yeah. I'm checking engineering. His voice on the comm sounded out of breath and distracted. Anomalous, the interface muttered unhelpfully. Shut up, Denny told it. Worried about Nahian, Denny said, Just take it slow. We'll find her. They had to find her. Screens expanded and loaded the data. The sensor view of the station, the proximity scan, and the access log for the mini-landers. Ship sifted the hull proximity scan to priority. Denny knew it was just the assistance function, picking up on movements and words, and trying to help make the process faster. But now it made ice prickles skip across Denny's skin, as if ship itself was suggesting that Winnie might have gone out the airlock. The interface whispered, Probability low. Denny was so grateful they didn't tell it to shut up. They pushed the proximity scan aside and pulled up the access log for ship's shuttle dock and locks. The log showed no one had tried to dock. The hard seal was still active, which was a relief. The vision of a ship with some kind of concealing proximity filters sliding up nearby, shapes in transfer suits floating towards the lock. Denny shook it off and checked the shuttle and the mini-landers, just to confirm Winnie was still aboard. The shuttle sat in its dock, seals active. The mini-landers... Denny hissed under their breath, disbelief and dismay. One slot was empty. Why? Denny whispered. They fumbled for the comm. Nay, a mini-lander's gone. Where do you think she went? That was an incredibly stupid question. It has to be the station. Why would she... Nay, are you there? She switched a screen to the interior mini-lander access. Nahian was climbing into one, its course set for the station. Denny didn't make it down there in time to do anything but stare hopelessly out of the hatchport as the mini-lander vanished into the dark. Anomalous, the interface said. Denny bent over, clawed at their head with their hands, pulling their hair. Shut up! I don't know what's doing this, and you're not helping. Denny fought the wave of panic. But what if they were next? Would they even know? What if they thought they were standing here, but were already walking toward the last mini-lander? Log, the interface said. Check the log. Denny sobbed a bitter laugh. That was how you knew it was really bad, that the interface was trying to be helpful. I checked ship's logs. You should know you were there. Our log, the interface said. Huh? Denny said aloud, then realized what it meant. That was the only voluntary interaction they did with the stupid thing, dumping the logs every month. What did you log? Check the log, the interface repeated. It had never done this before, never told Denny to do anything. Maybe all that anomalous bit hadn't been the usual bid for attention, the interface's outward expression of Denny's brain chewing itself up. Maybe the thing had been trying to warn them. Fine. All right, fine. Denny went to the nearest board and downloaded the log into the reader. As the screen popped up, they froze. It was all contact requested and contact blocked notices. They stared, trying to make this into something else, something not this freaky and terrifying. But it made too much terrible sense. Winnie and Nahian both had standard interfaces. If they had received these contacts too, something was sending a message, not to the comm but to our implants. But you blocked it to mine. Denny scrolled down. There was a whole section of adjacent contact blocked, with matching timestamps for the last few hours, when Denny and Nahian had been together gaming. "You blocked it for Nay too," Denny said slowly. "Because we were sitting together, and he was in your range. Then when we separated, it got him?" The interface didn't respond. Maybe it was mad. Or maybe it was busy. Denny's stomach dipped. "You're still blocking it." "Yes," the interface said. "Do you know what it is?" "Signal unknown. No prior contact," the interface said. "Non-standard. Unidentifiable. Detrimental effects." Mind-controlling effects. Something worming into your interface to make you leave ship. Go to the station. For what? Maybe it didn't matter for what. It wasn't like it was going to be something good for Winnie and Nahian. Denny wanted to be mad. Wanted to say, "Why didn't you say something?" But that sounded too much like their brother. And they had more self-control than to do what was basically victim-blaming. The interface could barely communicate because Denny wanted it that way. And it had been trying to tell them something was wrong the whole time. "Okay." Denny took a deep breath, pressing their hands together to stop trembling. This was still a horrible thing, but it wasn't a ghost, and it wasn't their friends having a psychotic break or a monster. Well, it still might be a monster. But here, in the floating blue letters of the interface's log, was evidence that this had been deliberately caused by something on the station. "Can you keep blocking it? Like, at closer range?" Seconds crawled by. The interface said, "Probability high." "Okay then," Denny said, and steeled himself. "This is a tech problem." Denny took the shuttle, because they would need it to bring back Winnie and Nahian, and there was no point considering any other possibility. As the station loomed closer, all the comm bands were still silent, except for the interdict warning. The fact that this close Denny could see interior lights, shining brightly from ports and glowing from the translucent pyramids, just made it worse somehow. Lights in the dark were supposed to be reassuring, not a warning, like bright colors on venomous fauna. Then the shuttle's scan found an automated beacon for a dock designated for small to mid-sized tenders. The docking procedure was weirdly normal, the shuttle settling onto a pad as the station's gravity took hold. The outer doors sealed, and the hatch sensor recorded an acceptable atmosphere level. But it was all done in automated silence, with no confirmation or chatter from a controller, human or otherwise. Even the interface had stopped saying, "anomalous." Denny wished it would talk again, because silence right now was terrifying, but they felt too guilty to ask. Denny set the shuttle to seal out anyone without a crew signature, because coming back to find it gone was one of the many nightmare scenarios battering their composure right now. Then they checked their equipment, conquered a small, paralyzing surge of terror, and opened the lock to dry recycled air. The bay's inner doors had already cycled open to the bright lights of a port. They waited for the shuttle's hatch to close, then walked forward into the station. Past the bay doors was a big oval space. The floor was made to look like polished, silver-gray stone tile, and the high arched ceiling had a colorful mural. It showed figures in flowing bright clothing and elaborately decorated pressure suits walking in a circular pattern, like they were all marching toward the center point of the ceiling. Denny had taken the precaution of putting on a landing vest, which had all the equipment you might need for walking on a hostile planetary surface, including an emergency breather tube. They used the attached camera to record everything, because crew certification class had said you never knew what might be important later. The place was designed like a piece of art, curves and angles meant to be beautiful, colors and textures meant to please the eye. It was empty, and so silent Denny couldn't even hear any air recyclers. They could yell to ask if anyone was here, if Winnie or Nahian could hear them. But the stillness felt threatening, like it might be broken violently at any instant. Maybe it was better to be as quiet as possible. A whole line of bay doors stood open along the curve of the wall. Denny walked along them, staring horrified at landing vehicles and tenders of all shapes and sizes, obviously from a variety of different ships, until they found the 2 empty mini-landers. It was proof Winnie and Nahian were here somewhere. Denny told himself it was progress. Between the disembarking area and the station's hall was a line of pillars, twisted like the giant sweetbread Nahian made when they could get the right ingredients. There's got to be some kind of barrier for the docks, right? In case there's a lock blowout, Denny thought. Probability high, the interface said. Denny pretended it wasn't a sharp stab of relief to hear it speak again, to hear something familiar that broke the crushing silence. They started forward. The creeping sensation of wrongness built in Denny's chest and froze their feet just before the line of pillars, at the spot where a barrier might conceivably appear and trap them away from the shuttle, bouncing between "I can't do this" to "I can't go back without them." Denny couldn't move. They took a deep breath and tried to push past the solid wall of fear. They told themselves, "This is a tech problem." Interface whispered, "Tech problem, tech solution." Denny wanted to sob, the reminder that they weren't alone. The reminder that the interface had figured out at least part of what was going on here. And without it, Denny would have had no clue what to do. "Thank you. I know I've been a shit to you, and I'm sorry." It didn't respond, but apparently took the apology as permission to communicate more. Direction estimation of compulsion signal to human subject traffic, it said. Forward and right at the junction. Denny took that last step past the pillars. No barrier sprang up to shut them in here forever, and they kept walking. They followed the curved wall past another mural, wondering if the first-wave people who had built this place had really worn flowing skirts and robes and scarves, and so much jewelry dripping from their necks and wrists and waists. It looked cool, but terribly impractical. During the frantic rush to get the shuttle prepped, Denny had changed into work fatigues and put on real shoes, but under the exploration vest, they still wore a sleep shirt with the cartoon mascot of ship's homeport and a knitted cardigan. They were definitely underdressed for the place's heyday, though probably the murals were just as accurate a representation as Muggy the talking lizard. Seeing the lights from outside had made Denny's veins shiver, but inside it was worse, like someone might come around a corner at any moment. Denny's back prickled with the feeling of being watched, and they admitted reluctantly, "There's an intelligence doing this, luring people here." The interface said, "Sentient, deliberate, communicates." "Communicates," Denny whispered aloud, and flinched at the way it broke the silence. "The compulsion signal you're protecting me from." It was weird to say protected in association with the interface, and Denny had too much going on right now to examine their emotions around that. "Communicates with..." A new spike of terror hit. "With you?" "Yes. It makes demands," it added, apparently trying to be reassuring. "Irrelevant." The last thing it had said was relevant was the insanely high fee structure at Ring Transit. That had definitely not been irrelevant either. Denny asked, "What demands?" Then answered their own question. "It wants you to let it get me." "Turn left at the junction," it said. Denny hesitated. Did they trust the interface? Sort of. Mostly. If it wanted something bad to happen to Denny, all it had to do was let the signal through. At the next junction, the hall stretched out to a wide sweep of silver and translucent stairs, with big crystal pillars on each side. There were landings on the way up, large platforms that in a normal place would be used for markets or restaurants or other gathering areas. The walls looked dark at first. Then Denny realized they were transparent, looking out onto the asteroid and the darkness of space surrounding it. The stair led up into the lower inverted pyramid. No sign of a lift platform of any kind, not that Denny would have trusted one. The interface said, "Up." On the stairs, the transparent walls showed Denny a canyon, deeply carved into stone, partially lit by the station's floodlights. After one glance, they didn't look again. The bright light just made the shadows look more sharply defined, like something was out there in the dark, looking in. Denny reached the first landing and froze, stomach trying to climb up into their throat. They tried to see a crumpled pile of clothing, trash left behind when this place was evacuated. But it was a body. It was old, flesh collapsed under what might be a ship's uniform or work coverall. The hands were stretched out, nails broken, and the floor stained underneath. They had clawed at the floor, trying to drag themselves onward. Denny's heart pounded. Before this moment, they would have said that seeing a dead body would paralyze them with fear, double them over with nausea. Instead, it felt like an ice water bath. They were so alert, it was like their eyes and ears had expanded to take in every part of their surroundings. Their normally rambling, racing thoughts were intensely focused. It must be some kind of extreme survival reaction, because they were dripping cold sweat and having all the physical symptoms of a person who should be screaming. Either Denny had been in shock and had snapped out of it, or was in some even deeper version of shock that was weirdly helpful. They swallowed down bile and crossed the broad platform to the next set of stairs. By the time Denny climbed toward the fourth landing, they had given up counting bodies. People must die here pretty quickly. The signal must not let its victims look for food or water, even if there were any supplies left here after all this time. They know, right? Denny asked the interface. The compulsion doesn't stop them from knowing what's happening. They fight it, but they can't win. The interface didn't answer, and Denny trudged up the steps in grim silence. Then it said, "Undetermined." "Which part?" Denny asked. It said, quote, "They fight it, but they can't win. Undetermined. Tech problem, tech solution." Denny stopped, took a long breath. They made themselves dig a hydration tab out of the pouch in their vest and swallow it. "Okay," they told the interface. "Okay. Don't give up," it was saying. "Is it still communicating demands to you?" "Yes," it added. "It is persistent." There was a hesitation. "It demands to download to our hardware." Denny grimaced. An evil compulsion signal on a ghost station wanted to download to their data storage interface. It was a good thing they were already in shock. "Do you know why?" "Speculation?" the interface asked. "Speculate. Go on." "So it can be transported from its current hardware." "Oh," Denny said aloud. "That's why it calls people. It's looking for brain implants, augments, that it can download itself to escape this station." "Probability high," the interface said. Thinking that over, Denny climbed the last few steps to the next platform. It was like all the others, strewn with decayed bodies. Then Denny's heart jumped. There was a figure at the base of the next set of stairs, not crumpled, not slumped over. Denny ran, boot soles squeaking on the floor. They tripped and slid the last couple meters on their knees. It was Winnie. She was breathing. She was alive. She sat up straight, legs folded under her, staring upward. She still wore her sleep clothes, lounge pants, a t-shirt advertising air system repair on High Mountain Station, and little shipboard socks with grippy soles. Her expression was set in what looked like deep concentration. Her gaze narrowed, and tears stained her cheeks. Denny breathed her name, then scooted close enough to press their forehead against hers. She sobbed a startled breath and grabbed their arms. In a harsh croak that barely sounded like her, she said, "What? How are you?" "It's the interface," Denny whispered, fishing out a water tab to give her. She didn't let go, so they pressed it into her mouth. "It can block the signal. You know it's a signal, right?" They felt her jaw work as she bit the tab and swallowed it. "Yes, that I figured out." Her voice was a little stronger, her grip on Denny's arms hard and desperate. "I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't—" She cut herself off, grimly determined. "It got weaker when I got up here. I don't know why. I was able to stop and sit down here. But I couldn't make myself turn around and go back. The interface said, "Positional signal drop." Denny said, "So she's in a low signal zone. If she moves, it might get worse." They added hurriedly to Winnie, "The interface. Did you see Nay?" "He walked past me. I couldn't turn my head. I just saw him out of the corner of my eye. I thought it had you too. I thought—" She squeezed their forearms tighter. "You have sedatives?" "Oh!" Denny could awkwardly walk Winnie to the shuttle with their heads pressed together, but as soon as Denny left to go back for Nahian, the signal would take her again. But not if she was unconscious. "You're fucking brilliant." "If it works," she breathed. Denny dug into their vest pockets for the medical kit and gave Winnie the sleeping tab. Then they held her until she was all the way out, and they could lower her to the floor and turn her on her side in a recovery position. Then Denny shoved to their feet and started climbing again. Denny neared the top of the next set of stairs, and they knew what was coming. The odor of decay was so strong now it overpowered the air cleaners. They kept their eyes down as they climbed until the top step, when they forced their gaze up, braced for more horror. This was the junction level between the two pyramids, the station's heart, the 0 point for the signal. The stairs came up into the center of the huge space. All 4 outer walls were transparent, and the lights had been dimmed to highlight the view outside. The silver-etched floor was covered with corpses, stretched out, collapsed into little heaps. Interface said, "Focus. Goal-oriented." Denny set their jaw, dragged their gaze away from the dead. "Goal-oriented, right." They turned, and relief hit like a wave as they spotted a standing figure. Nahian faced what looked like an art installation, meant to be a static representation of a storm, with different colors of tiny crystal conduits flowing like arteries, circling up like a whirlwind. Denny picked their way forward past the bodies. As they drew closer, something in the bottom of the crystal funnel moved. Peering carefully, Denny saw holographic images hanging inside it. These were views of the station, the docks, the outside of the asteroid, the halls, other places Denny hadn't seen yet. This wasn't art. It was a very fancy control center. Denny reached Nahian and put their head to his, but he just stood there, like a warm, breathing statue. Calling his name, shaking him didn't help. The signal must be too strong here. Denny wanted to make sure Nahian was all right first, get consent to sedate him, but that wasn't going to happen. Denny pushed a sedation tab into Nahian's mouth and waited until he started to fold over. They dragged his limp weight back through the bodies to the top of the stairs and started to haul him down. After that, it was just slow and painful. Denny wrestled Nahian down the flights of steps and across the landings until they reached Winnie. Then Denny took her down to the next landing, then went back for Nahian. Midway down, Denny had to rest and have a few water and energy tabs before they could start again. It was rough, bumpy work. All 3 of them were going to be covered with bruises, and Denny was going to need a hospital. By the time they got both Winnie and Nahian to the bottom of the stairs, Denny ached all over and was a little high from the energy tabs. They had to collapse on the floor and just breathe and not cry for a bit. Then they checked the others with the medical kit's pulse ox monitor. Both were fine, though. Winnie showed signs of waking. Denny checked the time on the sedation tabs and saw, she needed another dose. Hopefully this would be the last one. It wasn't far to the docks. Then the shuttle, then ship, and then the fuck out of here. Denny pulled them along one by one on the smooth floor, taking it in easy stages. They got to the disembarking hall, across from the pillars that partitioned off the dock. Staggering with weariness, Denny grabbed Nahian and pulled his inert body forward. In the silence, a click sounded as loud as a shot. Denny whipped around. The twisted pillars unfurled, like rolls of fabric. Denny blinked, with no idea what they were looking at. Then the pillars unrolled into a solid metal wall, floor to ceiling. "No," Denny whispered. "Oh no." Cold with dread, Denny lowered Nahian to the floor and ran to the barrier. It was solid, the metal cool under their hands. "You should have known," they told themselves. "You did know." Denny had been afraid of those pillars the whole time. They pounded on the barrier and held back a scream. The floral design etched on it was like a deliberate insult. Finally, Denny went back and slumped down beside Nahian. They were shaking, but calm enough now to think rationally, mostly. They asked the interface, "Is there a way to find the controls and force it open?" Interface said, "Control location unknown." Right, of course. The next idea. It had occurred to Denny earlier on the long nightmare journey down the stairs. The three of them might escape, but this thing would keep doing this to people. Keep murdering in its quest for freedom or whatever the hell. It wants to download to you so it can escape. What would happen if it did? It would control our functions, the interface said, as if it was obvious. It was kind of obvious. Our functions, Denny thought. Winnie had said arguing with an interface like this was like arguing with your spleen. As far as it was concerned, they were two parts of the same person. What happens if we download it? It'll use you to take over my brain? Keep speculating. Just speculate whenever you want, forever. The interface said, "That is what it thinks will happen. It has no information or prior experience with a being like us." Okay. Denny's mouth was dry. A being like us. What would actually happen? Tech solution, interface said. It happened in flashes. Denny was on the hard floor, looking up at the bright lights. Their body felt heavy and floaty at the same time. Nahian leaned over them, saying in panic, "Denny? Denny! What happened? Where are we?" Denny couldn't move, couldn't answer. Their brain took in what they saw and heard, but could do nothing else. Past Nahian, Winnie staggered up. "Just grab them. We've got to get out of here," she gasped. As Nahian grabbed Denny around the shoulders and dragged them upright, Denny got a glimpse of the dock, of Winnie stumbling toward it. The barrier was gone. The pillars twisted back into their original shapes. That was good for some reason, though Denny couldn't remember why. The interface had said, "Full initialization must be permitted first, for the scenario to work as intended." Denny had told it, "Because you need the access to be able to set the auto-delete." The access to Denny's brain. The code would have to be stored in Denny's neural tissue, or the entity, the signal entity, would know what they were planning. "You know I never wanted that. To initialize you." The interface didn't reply. There wasn't much it could say. Facts were facts, and arguing didn't change that. Denny had said, "I just have to trust you then." "Trust your spleen," the interface had said, and Denny had collapsed laughing, maybe a little hysterical. Next flash, Denny recognized the ceiling of the medical evac bunk on the shuttle, the worn padding cushioning their body. Nahian buckled the safety strap across Denny's chest, fingers fumbling in haste. Winnie squeezed in next to him, trying to get the vitals monitor onto Denny's finger. "Interface?" Denny managed, and it was shouting into a void. No answer. Nahian sounded awful, his voice uncertain and hoarse. "If we're awake, why isn't Denny?" "Because they took half the drugs in their medical kit. The stimulants and the sedatives. Maybe something else." Winnie was bleary but coherent. "Don't know why. Unless they were trying to stop the signal from taking control of them, like it did us." "But why did we wake up?" Nahian asked helplessly. She shook her head. "Something must have happened after Denny found me." Interface said, "Procedure issue. Signal entity must be sequestered entirely from organic functions." Yeah, Denny had thought of that too. It would be in their body. It could do or say anything, like go for the shuttle and leave Nahian and Winnie behind, or kill them. That thought chilled their bones. They dug in the vest pocket, into the supply of drug tabs. "I've got a solution for that." "Tech solution," Interface said. Denny gasped awake and tried to flail. The flail was unsuccessful. They were strapped into the passenger chair in the rear of the cockpit. Nahian and Winnie were in the pilot's chairs. "Denny, what the hell?" Winnie demanded. "Why did you take all the drugs?" Nahian added. Was that part of a plan? The screens floating in the cockpit showed they were at the end of a warp corridor, but Denny's connection to ship was more complete. They had access to all the menus, everything neatly laid out. Ship was just coming into range of ring transit. Interface? Denny asked. Tech solution successful. No anomalies detected, Interface said. A new update is available for floating islands from Game Center. Denny groaned in relief. Yeah, we had a plan. We? Winnie twisted to face them, brows lifted. We, Denny confirmed.
A quick note from Alex, who reviewed the entire anthology. Makers by C.L. Hellison is a great way to kick off this tribute anthology to Tanith Lee. A compelling story about creation, artistic and otherwise, and the ethics and power of creation in anthology about the same, while never once forgetting to be a compelling story. I loved this book from cover to cover, but wanted to share a bit about the stories that really stuck with me. The Jealous Wives of the Sea by Alea Dawn Johnson has rich world building and political intrigue that is oceans broader than the porthole we get to glance through. Data Ghost by Martha Wells presents a wonderful haunted space station and wrestles with the implications of rogue AI and implanted tech. Death Valley 71 by Amelia Mangan has a wonderful King in Yellow feeling, where art consumes you and drives you mad, all without My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult sort of soundtrack. Another Face by Getty Hess may have done the most psychic damage to me. I had heard of Tanith Lee's Flat Earth series and was aware of them, but I didn't know they were so lush. This reminds me of Clark Ashton Smith's Zotica stories, which I adore. This story convinced me that Flat Earth needs to move sharply up my TBR, possibly to be inflicted on my book club. Me again. I love how this story makes the concept of the good and bad angels on your shoulder literal. I love how it touches on some of Wells' favourite themes, not the least of which is whether there is any meaningful difference between digital and biological life. In a moment of serendipity, I found myself reading this story at the same time as I've been diving into Alien Earth, and trying to understand why that exists. Now that sounds really snarky, I know, but you should know by now that's not what I do. You should also know there won't be any spoilers. Suffice to say, it's an interesting show, but it's one I really don't like very much, and I think I only just figured out why. There is a lot of discussion at the moment about canon and continuity, and what fits where, and that discussion is phantom-wide. I find myself wondering whether that's a bonfire for people to huddle around so much as it is a fun problem to solve, because at the centre of Alien, as a concept, there is a void with metal for teeth, acid for blood, a void that when we get too close to it, just kills us. There is no hubristic and incompetent venture capitalist. There is no obtuse and vague hint at some sort of cosmic origin for mankind. Context is comfort. And for a lot of people that's the point. Scary stories to tell yourself around the campfire. The second on the roller coaster before it drops. Horror. Why we're all here. But there's another reason we're all here too, and that's the original concept of Alien. That void. The literal dark between the stars. The places where implacable, unknowable horrors don't wait for us because they don't know or care who or where we are. A universe of booby traps. A universe of knives. All of them pointed at us. All of that by accident. I love how Wells takes this concept and wraps it around the uncomfortable singularity of the clash between their narrator and their expert system. How the calls are coming from outside the suit, but inside the station, and how the line between human confidence and machine knowledge is a very, very friable one. I honestly find the ending here very sweet, one of those teachable moments where both sides learn something and progress is born from the fires of destruction, or from your onboard buddy hitting delete on the thing whose OS is in no way compatible with any of your own. That universe of knives is a lonely place, but we don't have to go there. Or be there, alone. Great work. Thanks all. Starting October 1st, we'll be introducing brief advertisements at the beginning and end of our episodes. We surveyed our audience about this a little while ago, and a huge majority of responses not only said they had no issue with ads, but asked us for an ad-free option for supporters. And we have one. If you subscribe before October 1st, you can lock in ad-free episodes and a feed that goes all the way back to episode 1 at our current base rate of $5 a month. After October 1st, you can still get that feed, but it will cost you $7 a month. So, you can get us for $5 a month forever before the 1st of October. And after that, $7 a month. Now, there is one thing that folks made it very clear they did not want. Mid-roll ads. For those of you that don't know, mid-roll ads are ads that land in the middle of an episode. I will promise you, right now, on the record, that we will never, ever do mid-roll ads. Ever. We're doing top and bottom ads for a few reasons. It helps us to support our creators. We believe everyone in our ecosystem deserves to be paid for their labour. As a non-profit in an environment where grant funding is essentially a barren, featureless wasteland now, we need to balance sustainability with our mission that we love, and that we can't do without you. We still need donations. We still need you. Think of this as an extra engine, not a replacement. So thank you for listening and for helping us bring free and accessible speculative audio fiction to listeners around the globe. And if you remember one thing from this, remember that you have until October 1st to lock that $5 price point in. And if you can't subscribe, we still need and welcome one-time donations, regardless of whether you do that or subscribe at the $5 level before October 1st. You should also know you're giving us more than just money. You're giving us stability, reliability, dependability, the chance to plan ahead, the ability to buy all those binding texts we need. You know, the occult ones with the symbols that we need for reasons. Those. Just trust us. Yeah? Cool. So if you can, please go to pseudopod.org and sign up by clicking on Feed the Pod. If you have any questions about how to support EA and ways to give, and especially if there are ways you would like to give which we don't currently know about, please reach out to us at donations@escapeartists.net. If you can't afford to support us financially, and we know times are hard and in many cases getting harder, please consider leaving reviews of our episodes or generally talking about them on whichever form of social media you are using to dissociate this week. We're having a lot of success with Blue Sky in that regard, and you can find us over there at pseudopod.org. Finally, if you like merch, you can also support us by buying hoodies, t-shirts and other bits and pieces from the Escape Artists Void merch store. The link is in various places, including our pinned post over on Blue Sky. PseudoPod is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Download and listen to the episode on any device you like. Don't change it, don't sell it. Theme music is by permission of Anders Manga. Join us next week for more true stories. In the meantime, PseudoPod wants you to remember, you know nothing. Hell is only a word. The reality is much, much worse. We'll see you next week, folks.
An arm appeared from nowhere on the shape, seemingly projected like the pseudopod of a protozoan.
It's a pseudopod. It's a big foot.
It's all about podcasts these days.